Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining. We are here to do a live stream on Kamala Harris's speech on the Ellipse. This is basically her closing argument. Why is the Ellipse so important? The optics of speaking at the Ellipse, because this is where Donald Trump held his rally on January 6, 2021. So I think the point here is to highlight the fact that this will be a moment where we can actually turn the page on what Donald Trump tried to wrought onto the country just 4 years ago here. So the bookend of him basically perverting, manipulating, exploiting the use of the Ellipse back in 2021 to Kamala Harris showing how much different it could be. I think the optics of her choosing this place to deliver this final closing message on the campaign can't be overstated here. So this is going to start momentarily. They've already got the live stream up. So I will be covering this throughout the entire process here as we await what I assume will be some other speakers as well as Kamala Harris. It looks like my volume needs to be raised a little bit, so let me do that. Okay, this might be a little bit better now in terms of the volume, but let me know if you need me to be a little bit louder. I thought what we could do while we wait for this speech to take off is answer some questions that you might have. So if you have any questions that you want me to answer, please feel free to throw them in the chat. All you got to do is tag my name in the chat, and I'll be able to see it that way. And we can use this time as efficiently as possible here. Okay. Thank you, people who are just tuning in. Just one quick sec. I do see that we are having a little bit of white noise on the audio. Let me do this. Let me see if I can fix this really quick. It might make this screen buffer for a moment. Don't worry. It'll be if it does buffer for a moment, I'll be right back. Do I think that this speech will help? Yes, I I do. I think that we are in a rare moment right now where we actually have the benefit of a lot of people finally paying attention to politics. And that doesn't happen often. I mean, I spend most of my time here where I basically just beg and plead for people to make sure that we're paying attention to politics all year round. Oftentimes, I'm just talking to a smaller group of people, and that's fine. That it is a smaller group of people, but look, we have a rare sliver of time right now where we finally do have the opportunity. Sorry, I was a little distracted because of these technical issues, but we do have this rare opportunity of time right now where we are talking to a broad swath of the population. I'm talking independents, former Republicans, people who don't pay attention to politics, this whole group of people who are actually going to decide this election. Remember, we are in a moment of extreme polarization and very high inelasticity. That means there are very few voters up for grabs, but of those voters, there are a few of them who will determine the outcome of this election, and those are the people who are finally paying attention right now. Every opportunity that Kamala Harris has to go and speak to a broad audience of people, as this speech this evening at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. it is another opportunity for her to garner the support of those people who might otherwise not know anything about her. Remember, there is a reason that we've been trying to broadcast Donald Trump as much as we possibly can. It's because the more people that hear from him, the more people don't want anything to do with them. The more people can tell that he is wearing his cognitive decline on full display. So I'm happy to broadcast Donald Trump because the more people that hear from him don't like him, and the more people that hear from Kamala Harris do like her. And so I think both of those points are especially important right now. Let's see. By the way, if anybody has questions, you can tag my name, throw them into the chat. Do I think that the the comedian controversy will have any effect or too little to matter? Look, everything is going to matter a little bit. Nothing is going to matter a ton, most likely. I mean, something cataclysmic would have to happen for it to matter a ton. But I think every little bit does matter because, again, the margins here are not enormous. They're not hundreds of millions, tens of millions, or even millions of voters. They're not hundreds of thousands. They may very well be tens of thousands of voters or thousands of voters. And if this comedian, who was vetted by the Trump campaign, whose comments were vetted by the Trump campaign, has decided to come out and use that platform given to him by the Trump campaign to shit all over Latinos and Puerto Ricans, whose support Donald Trump needs in this election, and who, for all accounts, by all accounts, he was starting to make inroads with, then yeah, I do think that will have something of an impact. I do think that there are people out there who, right at this very moment, when people are paying attention to this election, in late October of an election year, Donald Trump trots somebody out from his campaign on the biggest stage that he could possibly find to say that Puerto Rico is an island of garbage. Do I think that that will matter? I think it'll matter on the margins, but the elections are won on the margins. This is a game of inches, not miles. And if it means that this got us an inch with a few more people, if this changed even just 1 or 2 votes per precinct, that can very well be the difference between winning a state and losing a state. So yes, I do think that every little bit matters right now, and especially something as cataclysmic as straight up just calling the island of Puerto Rico garbage. Okay, we got a lot of questions coming in now. How many people at the rally today? I know we will see tens of thousands of people at this rally today. I am I'm not exactly sure what the number is going to be. We will get that later on. Am I still doing the Zoom at 7? Yes, 7 o'clock Eastern, which is about 35 minutes from now. I am doing a special Zoom with Mark Elias and Glenn Kirshner, all about. It's called the Race to Certify. So I'm gonna answer any questions that they have about race certification here. So you can check out that, or you can stay here. I'll also make sure to put that on this YouTube channel. So if you miss it, we'll make sure to get it to you some other way. But if you want to watch, I'll throw the link right up in the comments section as well, and you can swap over or listen to both. Can Trump's secret work for him? Here's the deal. Donald Trump's secret is obviously that he wants to refuse certification and throw it into a contingent election, which will mean that the race is up to House delegations, not members of the House. That doesn't mean that, okay, if Democrats win the House votes. It means House delegations. How many delegations which party has more majorities in the House delegations? So right now, Republicans control that, and they will control that because of the way that Republicans have been able to gerrymander their congressional districts. Republicans will control House delegations, and so they want this to be a contingent election where there's no unanimity among who actually won, so that they can throw it to the House delegation, and then of course the House delegations they have Republican majorities, and they will just declare Donald Trump the winner. That will not work because we have a revised Electoral Count Reform Act, which says that if you want your protests to be valid in Congress, it's not just 2 members of the House and 2 members of the Senate. Now it is 2/3 of all members of the House, which means it has to be a bipartisan effort. Republicans' best case scenario might win the House by 1 or 2 seats. What's more likely is that Democrats win the House this election cycle. But I'll tell you what, they are not getting 2/3 of the House to object to the election results, which means Trump's plan here, his big, brilliant plan, which, by the way, if it was that smart, he probably wouldn't be saying it on stage at Madison Square Garden. His big plan here is not going to work. So if that gives some solace to folks who are watching, do not worry. I'm going to go into detail with that exact thing on my channel in a discussion that I have with Mark Elias either today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. So if you want to be able to listen to all of the information on that, on Trump's secret plan, please make sure to subscribe to this channel and keep an eye out for that. Okay. Let's see, pulling back up these questions. We have measures on the ballot. How do we sort through this legalese? If you are trying to figure out what to vote for on your ballot and you need it put in plain terms, go to votesaveamerica.com. Votesaveamerica.com. It translates all of these ballot measures and initiatives into common sense language. It tells you who supports each ballot measure so that you can get a better idea of who you align yourself with, whether they support it. VoteSaveAmerica.com. That's what I use to fill out my ballot here in Los Angeles. What do you make of the ballot boxes in Washington State and Oregon that someone lit on fire? I actually did a full episode on that with Mark Elias. That will be the next video coming out on my channel. Keep an eye out on this channel. The next video that comes out will be about the ballot boxes set on fire, what the remedies are, whether it means that we should be worried about copycats. Lots to talk about on that issue. So again, subscribe to this channel and you can keep an eye out for my next episode of Democracy Watch with Mark Elias. Let's make this a little bit bigger on this screen here, so folks who are just tuning in know that we are at the right place. Okay. Question for the Zoom tonight, and this is, by the way, for folks just watching, this is the Zoom I'm hosting with Jamie Raskin and Mark Elias momentarily in about 30 minutes. How do we get rid of electors and switch to the popular vote? I can actually answer that right now. It is to adopt the National Interstate Popular Vote Compact. Right now, we have about 210 electors worth of states who signed on. Once we have enough electors who sign on to reach 270, it goes into effect. So we just need more states to adopt the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, and once that becomes the case, then we can get rid of this electoral college system. Well, it wouldn't be getting rid of it entirely. It would be mandating that the electors from each state automatically get awarded to the person who wins the popular vote. So that's what it would do. It wouldn't do away with the Electoral College. It would use the Electoral College and say, okay, every state, California has 55 or 54 electors. Those get automatically awarded to whoever wins the popular vote. But we need more states to sign on, and that's up to each state legislature to do that. So if you live in a state that has not yet signed on to the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, call on your state to do that. Call on your legislators to do that. Have I seen a poll out of Kansas that has Donald Trump up only 5? He won Kansas by 15 in 2020 and 21 points in 2016. I haven't seen the poll yet, but look, I'm not, the last thing I'm going to do is be deterred by any poor polling. I am not a poll doomer. I have sat here and watched as Democrats have overperformed in elections in 2018, 2020, 2022, especially 2023, especially where Democrats have won elections in Ohio and Virginia and Kansas and Kentucky and Alabama. So I am not of the group of people who is going to see polls and either do doomerism for the polls, but I'm also not somebody who's going to say, we should just get complacent because we've got this in the bag. Always act as if you're 3 points down every single time. And so there's always more work to be done as it relates to these polls. Always more work to be done as it relates to this election. How do I handle election anxiety? I'm excited and scared at the same time. Here's the best way. Here's my absolute best answer. It is to channel that nervous energy, that anxiety into something valuable or useful or productive. And so if you have the opportunity, you can donate, you can volunteer, you can phone bank, you can text bank, you can knock on doors, you can canvass. There is always more to be done. You can go to any single website. You can go to Stand Up America. You can Google Stand Up America. They're a great organization that's looking for volunteers right now. There are. If you go to my link tree in my bio on my homepage of my channel, I have a lot of different organizations that you can find that you can do that with. You can go to votesaveamerica.com. There are volunteer opportunities there. So use your anxiety not to doom scroll, not to worry, but instead to volunteer and actually do your part to make a difference in this election. There are a lot of people who are looking for something to do. And I think if people could use that, then that would be our best bet. It looks like we are getting our first speaker here.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties upon the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Very nice. All right, I got some more questions here. We'll do my best to answer them, and then we'll go full screen because I think that this rally is beginning here. So if Kamala wins, can Biden use the Supreme Court ruling and make an official decision quelling any MAGA coups to take over via the 12th Amendment? Look, I've had this conversation, and it's a good question to ask, but do I think that Joe Biden is going to do that? No. Do I think that Joe Biden is going to use the Supreme Court's new presidential immunity as long as it's an official act? I just don't. I think just knowing who Joe Biden is and knowing the extent to which he will bend over backwards not to assert anything that even gives the optics of broad power, I think that that's going to be the case. But look, I don't think that we have to worry about any coup effort in the same way that we did on January 6th. First of all, there is a security perimeter around the U.S. Capitol that's going to be in place from like January 5th or 6th until the 21st after the swearing-in ceremony. And second, there were, again, changes, as I mentioned before, to the Electoral Count Reform Act that are going to make it way more difficult for them to reach that threshold that they need to register an objection to the electoral certification. So, you know, at this point, and by the way, we already know, and we know what their plans are. And we have people like Mark Elias who are ready for their plans this time and who have taken steps to prevent this from happening. There's going to be more physical security. There's going to be more legal security. So I don't think that it's going to be an instance where Joe Biden is required to go in and use a new Supreme Court precedent, as bogus as that precedent is, as bogus as that, you know, them creating this idea of presidential immunity out of whole cloth. I don't think that he's going to need to do that. My thoughts on the media double standards in holding Harris to impossible standards while saying boys will be boys with Trump. We have seen that Donald Trump knows how to game the refs, and the fact that the media continues to this day to treat him with kid gloves, to grade him on a curve, is one of the great failings of our time. It is a testament to the moral collapse of our institutions that they continue to do that. And by the way, I think that's why people consume independent media to the extent that they do at this point. All right, it looks like this rally is getting underway, so I will leave it there. One quick note for people watching: if you'd like to support these live streams, support my work, please do me a favor and subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything to do so. I don't do paid ads or sponsorships. I don't put my content behind a paywall. I never will. That is the best way to support my work.
And I'm Josh Zarowski.
In the spring of 2022, we were thrilled to find out I was pregnant with our first baby, a girl. But at 18 weeks, I suffered severe complications.
We were with 100% certainty going to lose our baby girl.
What I needed at that point was an abortion, so that I could safely and with dignity deliver our daughter and begin our healing process.
But under the extreme Trump abortion bans in Texas, doctors were forced to wait until Amanda's life was in danger before treating her. After 3 long days, Amanda developed sepsis and nearly died. She spent 3 more days in the ICU fighting for her life.
Donald Trump is responsible for what happened to our family and countless others. He brags about it, saying he's proudly the person responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade. Let's be clear. If given the chance, he would go even further and ban abortion in all 50 states with or without the help of Congress.
So to every voter out there, every family out there, we must stop them. To all my fellow men, show up for the women in your life and vote for Vice President Harris.
We can choose a new generation of leadership, a brighter future with Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. They won't stop fighting until they restore and protect reproductive freedom in all 50 states for every single one of us.
I'm Ryan Wilson. I'm a proud Atlanta native, entrepreneur, and small business owner. It takes more than just hard work to start a business. It takes a whole lot of money, too. I'm sure y'all know who understands that, though. Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is a champion for small businesses, a champion for entrepreneurs. She knows that small businesses are the lifeblood of our communities and the engines of our economy. Her policy would be a game changer for entrepreneurs. A $50,000 tax cut to get off the ground. Cutting unnecessary red tape to make it easier to grow a business. Making sure that folks that have had historic barriers accessing capital receive the support that they need. Now, these aren't the typical policies of a politician. These are the policies of a leader who cares about making our lives better, someone who is committed to listening to the people that they serve, taking good ideas from wherever they come from, and developing common sense solutions focused on getting things done. And what would Donald Trump do? Well, if it doesn't help himself or his billionaire friends, Donald Trump isn't interested in it. America deserves a leader in the office behind me that is going to fight for the people every single day. Not someone interested in himself or his personal grievances. So in 7 days, we're going to turn the page on Donald Trump. And then we're going to do something special. We're going to elect Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
My dad was my hero, but he wasn't just a hero to me. Hollywood even made a movie about him and his fellow service members. Just 6 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the Army Air Corps. Lieutenant Harry Crosby became the lead navigator of the Bloody 100th Bomb Group. He served under brutal conditions and flew 32 combat missions. He fought fascism. He was fortunate to return home alive. Of the 140 men he deployed with, all but 3 were killed or captured. These heroes are the men Donald Trump disrespects and calls suckers and losers. Trump even calls our fellow Americans enemies from within. Those who know Donald Trump the best are sounding the alarm to say he's unfit to lead. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, his own national security advisors call him dangerous and unfit to lead. We need to listen to them. I'm here honoring my dad because we ought to turn the page on Donald Trump's fear and division. I'm here because it's time for a new generation of leadership. Kamala Harris will be that leader. She'll honor those who serve and sacrifice on behalf of our nation. She's got a deep respect for the Constitution and the rule of law. And I'll be thinking about my dad, my hero, when I cast my vote for our next president, Kamala Harris. Thank you.
My name is Teresa Acosta, and I'm a single mom of 3 very busy teenagers. My youngest was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes just after his 6th birthday. He needs insulin in his pump every day just to live. When I lost my job in 2020, I lay awake at night, terrified to be losing both my income and my health insurance. But the Affordable Care Act caught us from a free fall. Even though my son has diabetes, a pre-existing condition, he qualified for a plan, and I could afford the insulin and medical care we rely on to keep him healthy. Donald Trump wants to rip that away. He's promising to terminate the Affordable Care Act and throw my son off of his health care. I know these are not empty threats. He was only one vote away from actually repealing the Affordable Care Act in his first term. And let's make that his only term. For my son, the consequences of this election could be life or death. But Kamala Harris doesn't just represent the alternative to Trump. She represents a new generation of leadership, fighting for a future where every American has access to affordable health care. She'll strengthen and expand the Affordable Care Act, ensuring that kids like my son have the right to health care coverage. She's already fought against the drug companies to cap the cost of insurance, of insulin and prescription drugs for our seniors. But now, that's right. But now she will cap it for all Americans. That's the kind of leader we need in the White House. She will turn the page, so we will turn, all of us, will turn the page on Trump, y'all. And we are going to elect Kamala Harris, who will fight for all of us, just as hard as I fight for my son.
My name is Dr. Lakeisha Hallman. And while I'm a proud Atlanta resident now, I grew up in a small town of Batesville, Mississippi. My grandmother still lived in Mississippi. And when I call to check in, I hear about things they are worried about. It's no different from my friends in Atlanta and many families across America. They're worried about grocery prices, affording medicine, and paying bills. But the other things that they talk about is the hope that Kamala Harris brings them. How they feel she cares about them and their overall well-being. How she's capped the cost of their insulin, and how they know that she's going to do even more. My grandmothers are right. Kamala Harris is fighting for all of us. From my grandparents in small town Mississippi to young families that's just getting started in Atlanta, she is fighting for all of us. When she talks about building her opportunity economy, she's talking about an economy that will actually work for all Americans. Because Kamala Harris believes it's not enough to simply get by. She believes that we all must thrive. Donald Trump wants an economy that works for he and his billionaire friends. He doesn't want to lift us up. He wants to pass tax cuts for billionaires and stick the bill on us. He's done it before, and he will do it again. So let's finally turn the page on Donald Trump. And as President Harris will do what she's always done, she is going to deliver for us. She is going to deliver for the American people.
Hello, my name is Craig Sicknick. My brother was U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. He was a hero. Brian died after defending our country on January 6th from Trump's insurrectionists. My family knows how dangerous Trump is. He incited the crowd to riot while my brother and his fellow officers put their lives at risk. Now, Mr. Trump is promising to pardon the convicted criminals who attacked our Capitol, killing my brother and injuring over 140 other officers. This is simply wrong. We need a real leader, and Kamala Harris is that leader. I've had enough of Trump's politics of chaos, anger, and hate. It has real and dangerous consequences for all of us. It's time to turn the page and choose Kamala as our president. And Brian, we miss you every day.
Hello, my name is Jenny Poon. I am a daughter of refugees. I'm the founder of a small business, a co-working space in Phoenix, Arizona, that I founded with my husband. And a very proud parent to these two wild and wonderful children over here. This is Ada and Oaken. I don't think they've ever seen this many people in their entire lives. As a parent, I worry about expenses every single day. When I was pregnant with Oaken, I looked at the expenses that were piling up, the groceries, the bills for health care, the groceries, and I thought to myself, how are we ever going to be able to afford this? And I'm not alone in this. So many of us, business owners, friends, families, carry these growing costs, and it only is getting harder. Kamala Harris cares about the answers to these questions. She knows what it's like to grow up in a middle-class family, sitting at a table, watching her parents struggle to figure out how these bills are going to get paid. That's why she's taking on price gouging, to lower the cost of groceries, her plans will cut taxes for the middle class, and she'll work with developers and home builders to build more homes, making it affordable for every American to own a home. She's expanding support to small businesses like us and to the thousands of businesses I see in my space. Soon, every small business, anyone who wants to start something, will have the ability to do so. To think, nearly 40 years ago, the landmark legislation HR 5050 made it possible for women to create or get loans and bank accounts in their own names. I was 5 when that passed. And today, I was able to get a loan. Well, 10 years ago, I was able to get a loan and accomplish something that my parents would never be able to do. Get a loan to get a building. In my name, which would have been impossible in my mom's time. Before that, wealth was only built through men. Today, women run our homes, they run our businesses, they run our cities. And soon, they'll run this country. And yet, after all of this running that we're doing as women, Donald Trump doesn't think we are capable of making our own decisions about our bodies. Kamala Harris will protect and expand our rights and bring America forward, not back. For when we support women, when we support our families, we support our communities. This election, we have a chance out there. We have a chance to elect someone who sees us as more than birthers and vessels to their own wealth. Someone who protects women and families. Donald Trump wants to take us back, but to my daughter, for those who fought for us to get to the rights that we have today, we are never going back. I wish I could take credit for that line. That wasn't mine. Vice President Harris cares about every American like they are family. And I'm frankly tired of being the stepping stone for others to get rich. While Kamala Harris is fighting for us, Donald Trump couldn't care less about families like us. He's never known what it's like to worry about groceries and how much groceries even cost. His plan for a Trump sales tax would send costs skyrocketing, costing families nearly $4,000 a year for basic necessities. You've heard it again and again today. We need to turn the page on Trump. And the fears I had talked about earlier, the costs of diapers, Kamala Harris knows that too many families are worried about the same thing. That's why she's fighting for a $6,000 tax cut for parents with newborns. And a $50,000 tax credit for anyone who wants to start a business. I can't even begin to describe how life-changing that would have been for me and my husband when we were starting. So we have an opportunity to make history and create a middle class that thrives in America. So when Odine and I went to the polls, we actually mailed our ballots because we're in Arizona. Woo! We voted for the only candidate that treats every American as family, Kamala Harris, or as my daughter would call her, Auntie Kamala, every time she sees her on TV. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Bob Lang.
And I am Christina Lang.
Christina and I are farmers from Chester County, Pennsylvania. We live on our family farm that's been in my family since 1896. And we have been lifelong Republicans. I voted for Donald Trump twice. It made sense because I was a Republican, and that's what we did. I got to tell you though, Christina was way ahead of the curve. She only voted for him once. But it's very clear that Donald Trump doesn't care about helping hardworking people like us. He only cares about what's good for him and the super rich people that he touts to. He's too focused on seeking revenge and retribution to care about what we need. We deserve better. It's time to turn the page.
We deserve a leader who will bring people together and fight for the middle class, not someone who tries to divide us. And that's why Bob and I are both proudly voting for Kamala Harris. Never in a million years did I think that I would be up on a stage like this, supporting a Democrat for president. But enough is enough. After nearly a decade, it's time to turn the page on Donald Trump and his chaos and division. We've got to move forward. We've got to elect someone who is in the fight for the regular working people and who will get things done, like a middle-class tax cut or help with the sandwich generation, the ones who care for their kids and their aging parents. We've got to elect someone who will take us forward and not backward.
There's more at stake at this election than in any other election in my lifetime. And the choice for us and for millions of Republicans across this country is simple. My message to the millions of undecided voters, many of those Republicans, it's time to turn the page on Donald Trump. Kamala Harris will be a president for all Americans. Let's elect Kamala Harris!
USA!
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please welcome Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Good evening, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives. Thank you, everyone. So listen, 1 week from today, you will have the chance to make a decision that directly impacts your life, the life of your family, and the future of this country we love. And it will probably be the most important vote you ever cast. And this election is more than just a choice between two parties and two different candidates. It is a choice about whether we have a country rooted in freedom for every American or ruled by chaos and division. Many of you watching have probably already cast your ballots. But I know many others are still considering who to vote for, or whether you'll vote at all. So tonight, I will speak to everyone about the choice and the stakes in this election. Look, we know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election. An election that he knew he lost. Americans died as a result of that attack. 140 law enforcement officers were injured because of that attack. And while Donald Trump sat in the White House watching as the violence unfolded on television, he was told by his staff that the mob wanted to kill his own vice president. And Donald Trump responded with 2 words: "So what?" America, that's who Donald Trump is. And that's who is asking you to give him another 4 years in the Oval Office. Not to focus on your problems, but to focus on his. And Donald Trump has told us his priorities for a second term. He has an enemies list of people he intends to prosecute. He says that one of his highest priorities is to set free the violent extremists who insulted those law enforcement officers on January 6th. Donald Trump intends to use the United States military against American citizens who simply disagree with him. People he calls, quote, the enemy from within. America, this is not a candidate for president who is thinking about how to make your life better. This is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power. Donald Trump has spent a decade trying to keep the American people divided and afraid of each other. That is who he is. But America, I am here tonight to say that is not who we are. That is not who we are. That is not who we are. You see, what Donald Trump has never understood is that e pluribus unum, out of many, one, isn't just a phrase on a dollar bill. It is a living truth about the heart of our nation. Our democracy doesn't require us to agree on everything. In fact, we like good arguments from time to time. Just think of your own family, right? It's not the American way to not have disagreements. We don't shy away from robust debate. In fact, we like a good debate, don't we? We like a good debate. And the fact that someone disagrees with us does not make them the enemy within. They are family, neighbors, classmates, co-workers. They are fellow Americans. And as Americans, we rise and fall together. America, for too long, we have been consumed with too much division, chaos, and mutual distrust. And it can be easy then to forget a simple truth. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. It is time to stop pointing fingers. We have to stop pointing fingers and start locking arms. It is time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict. the fear and division. It is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And I am ready to offer that leadership as the next President of the United States of America. Now look, let me say, I recognize this has not been a typical campaign. Even though I've had the honor of serving as your vice president for the last 4 years, I know that many of you are still getting to know who I am. Well, let me tell you, I am someone who has spent most of my career outside of Washington, D.C., so I know that not all the good ideas come from here. I am not afraid of tough fights against bad actors and powerful interests, because for decades, as a prosecutor and a top law enforcement officer of our biggest state, I won fights against big banks that ripped off homeowners, against for-profit colleges that scammed veterans and students, against predators who abused women and children, and cartels that trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. And I did this work because for as long as I can remember, I have always had an instinct to protect. There's something about people being treated unfairly or overlooked that frankly just gets to me. I don't like it. It's what my mother instilled in me, a drive to hold accountable those who use their wealth or power to take advantage of other people. The drive to protect hardworking Americans who aren't always seen or heard and deserve a voice, and I will tell you that is the kind of president I will be. And look, I'll be honest with you, I'm not perfect, I make mistakes, but here's what I promise you. I will always listen to you, even if you don't vote for me. I will always tell you the truth, even if it is difficult to hear. I will work every day to build consensus and reach compromise to get things done. And if you give me the chance to fight on your behalf, there is nothing in the world that will stand in my way. So look, in less than 90 days, either Donald Trump or I will be in the Oval Office. Okay? On day one, if elected, Donald Trump would walk into that office with an enemies list. When elected, I will walk in with a to-do list full of priorities of what I will get done for the American people. And I will work with everyone, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, to help Americans who are working hard and still struggling to get ahead. I have been honored to serve as Joe Biden's vice president. But I will bring my own experiences and ideas to the Oval Office. My presidency will be different because the challenges we face are different. Our top priority as a nation 4 years ago was to end the pandemic and rescue the economy. Now, our biggest challenge is to lower costs that were rising even before the pandemic and that are still too high. I get it. I still remember our mother sitting at that yellow Formica table, late at night, cup of tea in hand, a pile of bills in front of her, trying to make it all work. And I've heard from so many of you who are facing even greater financial pressures. Donald Trump's answer to you is the same as it was the last time. Another $1 trillion in tax cuts for billionaires and big corporations. And this time, he will pay for it with a 20% national sales tax on everything you buy that is imported. Think about it. Clothes, food, toys, cell phones. A Trump sales tax that would cost the average family nearly $4,000 more a year. And on top of that, you will pay even more if Donald Trump finally gets his way and repeals the Affordable Care Act, which would throw millions of Americans off their health insurance and take us back to when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions. Well, we are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back, because we also know Donald Trump would deliver tax cuts to his billionaire donors. I will deliver tax cuts to working people and the middle class. I will make sure you have a chance not just to get by, but to get ahead. Because I believe in honoring the dignity of work. I will enact the first ever federal ban on price gouging on groceries. Cap the price of insulin and limit out-of-pocket prescription costs for all Americans. I will fight to make sure that hardworking Americans can actually afford a place to live. I'll never forget how our mother saved up and how excited she was when she could finally afford to buy our first home. I remember how excited she was. And I know that owning a home is not only a measure of financial security, it's about the pride of your hard work. And as president, I will fight to help first-time home buyers with your down payment, take on the companies that are jacking up rents, and build millions of new homes. For years, we have heard excuses about why America can't build enough housing. Enough with the excuses. I'm going to cut the red tape and work with the private sector and local governments to speed up building and get it done. And the cost of housing isn't the only financial pressure on middle-class families. I have met so many young people who have a natural desire to parent their children well, but not always the resources to do it. So I'll fight for a child tax credit to save them some money, which will also lift American children out of poverty. I'll work to lower the cost of childcare, which is out of reach for too many working families today, and for too many people in the sandwich generation who are raising young children and taking care of a parent. Juggling all of it is extremely difficult. You know, I took care of my mother when she got sick, cooking food that she had a taste for, finding clothes that would not irritate her skin, and understand, as I do, that caregiving is about dignity. It is about dignity. And currently, if you need home care and you don't have some money to hire someone, you and your family need to deplete your savings to qualify for help. That's just not right. So we're going to change the approach and allow Medicare to cover the cost of home care so seniors can get the help and care they need in their own homes. Now, Donald Trump has a different approach. He tried to cut Medicare and Social Security every year he was president. Look, I believe that when people have worked hard their entire life, they deserve to retire with the benefits they have earned. And I believe in the fundamental freedom of Americans to make decisions about their own bodies and not have their government tell them what to do. I will fight to restore what Donald Trump and his hand-selected Supreme Court justices took away from the women of America. That today, 1 in 3 women in America, think about it, 1 in 3 women in America lives in a state with a Trump abortion ban, many with no exceptions even for rape and incest. The idea that a woman who survives a crime of a violation to her body should not have the authority to make a decision about what happens to her body next, that is immoral. That is immoral, and Trump's not done. He would ban abortion nationwide, restrict access to birth control and put IVF treatments at risk, and force states to monitor women's pregnancies. Just Google Project 2025 and read the plans for yourself. And look, I think we all know one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to simply agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. Not the government. And when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom nationwide, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. Proudly. And look, on another subject, politicians have got to stop treating immigration as an issue to scare up votes in an election, and instead treat it as the serious challenge that it is that we must finally come together to solve. I will work with Democrats and Republicans to sign into law the border security bill that Donald Trump killed. When I was Attorney General of a border state, I saw the chaos and violence caused by transnational criminal organizations that I took on. And when I am president, we will quickly remove those who arrive here unlawfully, prosecute the cartels, and give Border Patrol the support they so desperately need. At the same time, we must acknowledge we are a nation of immigrants. And I will work with Congress to pass immigration reform, including an earned path to citizenship for hardworking immigrants like farm workers and our dreamers. As Commander-in-Chief, I will make sure America has the strongest, most lethal fighting force in the world. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has shown his contempt for our nation's heroes, calls them suckers and losers, called a 4-star Marine general a, quote, lowlife. I will always honor, never denigrate, the service and sacrifice of our troops and their families, and fulfill our sacred obligation to care for them. I will strengthen, not surrender, America's global leadership. And I will stand with our friends because I know that our alliances keep American people safe, and make America stronger and more secure. Look, world leaders think that Donald Trump is an easy mark, easy to manipulate with flattery or favor. And you can believe that autocrats like Putin and Kim Jong-un are rooting for him in this election. I will always uphold our security, advance our national interest, and ensure that the United States of America remains, as we must forever be, a champion of liberty around the world. America, we know what Donald Trump has in mind. More chaos, more division, and policies that help those at the very top and hurt everyone else. I offer a different path, and I ask for your vote. And here is my pledge to you. I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to make your life better. I am not looking to score political points. I am looking to make progress. I pledge to listen to experts, to those who will be impacted by the decisions I make, and to people who disagree with me. Unlike Donald Trump, I don't believe people who disagree with me are the enemy. He wants to put them in jail. I'll give them a seat at the table. I pledge to you to approach my work with the joy and optimism that comes from making a difference in people's lives. And I pledge to be a president for all Americans. And to always put country above party and self. I love our country with all my heart. And I believe in its promise because I've lived it. I grew up as a child of the Civil Rights Movement. My parents would take me to marches in a stroller, where crowds of people of all races, faiths, and walks of life came together to fight for the ideals of freedom and opportunity. I've lived the promise of America. I saw how hard our mother worked to give her daughters the same chances this country gave her. Growing up, I was blessed to have family by blood and family by love, who instilled in me the values of community, compassion, and faith that have always defined our nation at its best. I've lived the promise of America. I've spent my life fighting for the people who have been hurt and counted out, but never stopped believing that in our country, anything is possible. I've lived the promise of America, and I see the promise of America in all of you. In all of you. I see it. I see it in the young people who are voting for the first time, who are determined to live free from gun violence and to protect our planet and to shape the world they inherit. I see it in the women who refuse to accept a future without reproductive freedom, and the men who support them. I see it in Republicans who have never voted for a Democrat before, but have put the Constitution of the United States over party. I've seen it in Americans different in many respects, but united in our pursuit of freedom, our belief in fairness and decency, and our faith in a better future. America, I know the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. I know it. And that's why I am in this race, to fight for the people, just like I always have. Nearly 250 years ago, America was born when we wrested freedom from a petty tyrant. Across the generations, Americans have preserved that freedom, expanded it, and in so doing, proved to the world that a government of, by, and for the people is strong and can endure. And those who came before us, the patriots at Normandy and Selma, Seneca Falls and Stonewall, on farmlands and factory floors, they did not struggle, sacrifice, and lay down their lives only to see us cede our fundamental freedoms. They didn't do that only to see us submit to the will of another petty tyrant. These United States of America, we are not a vessel for the schemes of wannabe dictators. The United States of America is the greatest idea humanity ever devised. A nation big enough to encompass all our dreams, strong enough to withstand any fracture or fissure between us, and fearless enough to imagine a future of possibilities. So, America, let us reach for that future. Let us fight for this beautiful country we love. And in 7 days, we have the power, each of you has the power to turn the page and start writing the next chapter in the most extraordinary story ever told. I thank you all. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
obviously a huge disparity and a very important disparity to be drawn between what we just saw from Kamala Harris in this closing message on the campaign trail versus the last time that the Ellipse made national news, which was when Donald Trump used it as the backdrop, basically, for stealing the 2020 election. So a very important moment for her to come forward and use this Ellipse to kind of do what she's done in this campaign, which was to reclaim a lot of what Donald Trump had tried to take away. And I think one thing that he's tried to take away was this idea that our institutions and these American monuments, like the Ellipse itself, somehow belong to him or belong to his perverted manipulations and distortions in history, and that the Ellipse would forever be kind of sullied as the backdrop for the beginning of January 6th, the rally that led to the insurrection on January 6th. But that's not the only thing that Kamala Harris has sought to take back from Donald Trump, and that is this idea of patriotism, this idea of freedom, and more broadly, something that Trump hasn't been able to traffic in is the entire idea of hope and promise in what American can be. If you just look at the closing message of this campaign, a message where we can reclaim the ideals of what this democracy used to stand for from Kamala Harris. And that is, by the way, a strategic play, because it's also a pitch to those very Republicans who are going to be the ones very likely determining the outcome of this election. There is there's a narrow swath of people, these Nikki Haley voters, who've already made it abundantly clear that their priority here is not kowtowing to whatever autocratic fever dream Donald Trump is trying to sell. So it is smart. It is a smart strategic political play for her as well to be deferring to these ideas that do play very well with these moderate Republicans in an effort to expand our coalition. I think that's going to be one of the most important points here. But for this to be her closing message, and you contrast that with what Donald Trump made his closing message, and for all intents and purposes, I would presume that his closing message is going to be that his closing message was what he did at Madison Square Garden, because look, that is the biggest platform that you can find, in the United States. It doesn't get more. I guess the word is. It doesn't get more uniquely American than taking the stage at Madison Square Garden. So I think it was important for her to do this. But if you look at Donald Trump's closing message at Madison Square Garden, and really the news that came out of that, aside from the dystopian fever dream that he sells at all of his rallies, while he's also trying to figure out, about sharks and magnets and when World War II might happen at some point in the future, and the rest of the basically cognitive decline on full display. But really the message that came out of that rally was this idea that that he would double down, triple down on getting rid, if not just insulting, but straight up expelling people who don't view the world as he does, who don't look like he does. I mean, look at the biggest news story to come out of that Madison Square Garden rally was expressly this idea that that Puerto Rico is a floating island of garbage. This was something that was vetted by Trump's campaign. The reason by the way, that it was approved by Trump's campaign is that the same comedian who said that also was going to hurl an insult that I won't say on this channel right now at Kamala Harris, and that was struck by the Trump campaign, and the comedian complied, which goes to show that the Trump campaign did vet this information. And in the same way that they decided that calling Kamala Harris what he was going to call her was over the line, they also decided that calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage was not over the line, was acceptable for them, was okay, was fine. And so they gave their tacit permission to that as the closing message of their campaign on the biggest stage that they would have. Look, there's a reason that they chose Madison Square Garden and not Grand Rapids, Michigan, right? It doesn't get much more splashy than Madison Square Garden. This was the rally that they wanted the nation's eyeballs on, and they got it. And at that rally, when they had the opportunity to at least show some semblance of discipline, even if it wasn't real, just be disciplined enough to know that you can skate by and that you're going to have a big audience, and that maybe this isn't going to be the exact same MAGA crowd that you're used to in all of the other audiences. in this one moment, have some discipline. And yet, even in the moment when they had to exhibit the most discipline, the fact that they chose to spew more vile bigotry, more xenophobia, more discriminatory rhetoric like this puts on full display the fact that this is their closing message. This is what they want Americans to hear. When they say deport tens of millions of people who have been in this country many times, oftentimes their whole lives, that is the message that they are trying to convey. This is a dwindling faction of far-right extremists who have been peppered for years about this idea that their country, their culture is all being stolen from them. And so that's how they vote. That is what they are doubling down on. This is a politics of fear. And you contrast that with the message that Kamala Harris just put on full display, that America could be a leader in the world again, that we could go back to the values that we used to purport, used to exhibit, put on full display as Americans. I think that value unto itself, contrast unto itself is going to be so important in these final weeks. Not just for the fact that when people see Donald Trump, they like him less, versus when people see Kamala Harris, they like her more. That unto itself is, I think, an especially important element of this, because it is hard to get a lot of people to pay attention to certain events, for example. We know that. I mean, God knows Kamala Harris has had 100 rallies. How many of you have watched all 100 rallies? Maybe you've tuned into a few. Same with Donald Trump. It's hard to get people's eyeballs on anything unless it's a big splashy event. So for her to have this event tonight at the location that it was at, which is at the Ellipse, again, a location that was so egregiously perverted by what Donald Trump did on January 6th, I think does draw that contrast and will show people who are just tuning into politics right now, does show people the contrast on display here. That you have the politics of fear versus the politics of hope. That you have somebody who is looking out for himself and the lengths that he will go to preserve his own power versus somebody who has proven over and over and over that she is in this not to help herself, not to lower her own taxes, not to escape legal accountability, but to help middle and lower and working class Americans. That is the responsibility of this administration. And the plans, by the way, bear that out. I know a lot of people are wondering in these final weeks, look, you have people in your families, you have people in your circles of people that are wondering, how do you convince people to vote for Kamala Harris? It depends what the issue is. If we're talking reproductive rights, it's pretty clear. She has gone crisscross the country saying that she will advocate for Roe to be codified into law. And by the way, even if we don't take the Senate, we still have a couple of senators on the right who would support that, including Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, as well as perhaps other Republican senators who recognize that it was better when Roe was intact. Versus Donald Trump, for example, who has used the last 2 years, even in the face of what I would argue is the least popular Supreme Court ruling of our lifetimes, overturning Roe. Even in the face of that, even with elections happening, arguing that he deserves full credit for what they did. If you think that even as Republicans lost elections in 2022, 2023, Virginia, Kentucky, Kansas, Ohio, Alabama, on the back of Roe, the fact that that guy would still, to this day, brag that he was responsible for making that happen, if you really think that that guy is going to be the person who's going to then turn around and refuse to sign a nationwide abortion ban into law, you are kidding yourself. So on the issue of reproductive rights, which has been one of, if not the most potent issues facing us right now in this entire election cycle, obviously that disparity could not be more obvious. Then you look at the economy. First of all, what Donald Trump decided to do with his political capital when he became president in 2017, in January of 2017, he swept in on promises of passing a middle-class tax cut, on making things more affordable for you in the form of a cheaper and more comprehensive healthcare law. He said he would bring manufacturing back to the United States. He said that he would build up fossil fuel companies and coal companies, and as a repayment for them donating to his campaign. He said that he was going to oversee a jobs boom. He said that he was going to upgrade this nation's infrastructure. With his actual political capital, he did none of that. There was no middle class tax cut. There was no infrastructure law. There was no jobs boom. There was no reshoring of American manufacturing jobs. None of that happened. None of that happened. Instead, he used all of his political capital for one thing, to pass a tax cut where 83% of the benefits were conferred to the ultra-wealthy, to millionaires and billionaires. And the rest of us were supposed to thank him to our everlasting stars for the crumbs that we were given. That's what he did with his political capital, all while being swept into office under the pretense of being some champion for the populace. That's what he did with his political capital. So when he goes around now and says, I'm going to help the working class, these are my people, I'm going to cosplay as a McDonald's low-wage worker, and then, by the way, he's asked if he would even support raising the minimum wage and wouldn't commit to that. He is cosplaying as a McDonald's worker and yet can't even bring himself. When these people are making annualized $19,000 a year on a $7.25 minimum wage that hasn't been raised since 2009, even then, while he's doing his bullshit shtick and wearing his little apron and playing make-believe, doing make-believe McDonald's to make-believe customers, even then, he can't bring himself to confer one advantage to the working class. The notion that after that stunt, that after his entire presidency where he did nothing for the working class, that guy is going to be a working class hero. We've watched this movie before. We have read this story before. It might have worked the first time when he could swoop into office and say gauzy things like, I was greedy for myself, but now I'm going to be greedy for you. That might have worked the first time. I can see the appeal in it. I can see the appeal in it. But fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We have been here before. He will do nothing for the middle and working class because those are not his people. Those are not people he cares about. If he did care about them, he wouldn't have spent this entire campaign grifting those very people, hawking his junk at them, his licensed products like Bibles and $2 bills and coins and trading cards and crypto and NFTs, hats, shoes. I mean, this guy has tried to sell more shit to you than walking through a mall where there's bodegas left and right. He is a carnival huckster and nothing more. He is a walking licensing deal on 2 feet. That is not what somebody who is looking out for you tries to do. You can't both say that the economy is terrible under Joe Biden and also that you should buy my $100,000 watches. Doesn't work that way. That is a testament to the fact that Donald Trump thinks his supporters are stupid. So that's what Donald Trump is going to do for the economy. That's his economic outlook. Otherwise, his plan, tariffs, to impose tariffs on foreign countries because he thinks that when you impose tariffs, that's somehow a strike against China, for example. China is not the one who pays the tariffs. China doesn't incur those higher costs from the tariffs. The companies the American companies that import foreign goods are the ones that pay the tariffs. And those companies extend the cost not to China, but to consumers. That is a tax on us. And we know it's a tax on us because economists have already looked at this and they have calculated that it will cost us $4,000 per year per family, all because Donald Trump is either too stupid or too proud to understand what tariffs are. So because he's too stupid or too proud to understand tariffs, that's going to cost all of us $4,000 a year. Because he thinks that it makes him sound tough to talk tough on China and say, oh, we're going to slap a 60% tariff on China, a 100% tariff on China, a 2,000% tariff on China. The higher the tariff, the more that those American companies are going to have to pay when they import those foreign goods from China. And that is passed on not to China, but to American consumers. That is a tax on us. Donald Trump is running this campaign predicated on taxing Americans to the tune of $4,000 per family per year. So again, I don't know if he's too stupid or too proud to admit that he doesn't understand what tariffs are, but are you willing to pay $4,000 per year per family because Donald Trump doesn't know what tariffs are? Probably not. Meanwhile, look at what Kamala Harris is advocating for as far as her economic proposals. First of all, housing, one of the biggest issues that everybody, especially my age, especially younger, can appreciate. Nobody can afford housing. Well, guess what? $25,000 to first-time home buyers. Building 3 million homes because when supply goes up, demand and therefore price go down. Also, legislation to stop these corporate landlords from colluding to keep all of their rental prices high. That is what it looks like when you have a prosecutor in office who has experience prosecuting these kinds of people who exploit and manipulate for their own personal gain, for their own personal financial gain. That is what she will do when she comes into office. Also, to spur small business in this country, looking to raise the tax write-off from $5,000 a year for small businesses to $50,000 a year, a 10x increase to spur innovation, to spur to spur entrepreneurship in this country. That's also while setting an ambitious goal of 25 million new small business applications in her first 2 years as president. And by the way, that's not bluster, because in this administration right now under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we already have a record amount of small business applications, more even than when Donald Trump was president. So the difference on full display could not be more apparent here as it relates to the economy. Again, you've got somebody in Donald Trump who has not focused on anything even closely resembling a legitimate economic proposal because he doesn't understand the economy. He has been a con man and a fraud his entire life. He has been manipulating and screwing over people his entire life. He has been relying on shady accountants and inner circle of people his entire life, to the point where even the Trump organization is $500 million in the hole right now for committing fraud. When Donald Trump says he will run this country like he runs his businesses, that's the problem. That is the problem in all of this. Because his businesses are a fraud. They are a con against people. And that's what we can't have in this country. Otherwise, other than broad strokes where he just ultimately descends into fear-mongering and dystopian ramblings, he doesn't have a plan for Americans. He doesn't have a plan on the economy that extends beyond his own misinterpretation of what tariffs are. He doesn't have a plan to codify abortion rights into law. He doesn't have a plan to make healthcare more comprehensive and less expensive. He doesn't. He's had 9 years to do that. And yet when he's asked, he cannot give a straight answer because he doesn't have one. He has not bothered in this entire campaign, in the almost decade that he's been on the political scene, to come up with one specific that would show that he is actually taking his own promise of a cheaper and more comprehensive alternative to the ACA seriously. He's had 9 years to do it, and at no point has he done it because it is not a priority. Republicans had full control of government from 2017 to 2019. They offered nothing. Do you know why John McCain voted no for skinny repeal? Because there was no replacement. Because Republicans have been saying, led by Donald Trump, that they promise you the sun and the earth, that they will give you something that's going to be, again, more affordable, more comprehensive. But the reality is that they never put pen to paper because their priority was never to actually build a plan that was more comprehensive and less expensive. Their priority was never that. And if they had the opportunity to repeal, the only thing they would replace it with would strip away those very protections that we relied on. And so they could never put pen to paper because they knew that if they did, if we saw these healthcare plans that a Republican-led Congress or president would have written, it would have taken away the very things that make the ACA so popular, like protections for pre-existing conditions, for example, like making sure that that you can stay on your healthcare plan until you're 26 years old. Whatever it is, they weren't willing to do it because they knew putting pen to paper would kill their chances. And so they instead just promised the sun and the earth and said, trust us, trust us, trust us. Just repeal this massively popular piece of legislation that 50 million Americans rely on, and we will definitely totally get you something that's just great. And Americans knew not to believe them. John McCain knew that so long as there was nothing there, it was not worth taking away a lifeline for tens of millions of Americans. And by the way, they should have taken that same strategy of not putting pen to paper now. Because with Project 2025, that is exactly what they did here. I think the last time I checked, NBC did a poll that showed that Project 2025 has a 4% approval rating. That's less popular than like herpes. And yet they put pen to paper. They showed Americans what their plan was, whether it was a tax on abortion medication, whether it was Schedule F, which I can talk about in just a moment, whether it was a tax on the Department of Education, whether it was a tax, no matter what it was. The fact that they put pen to paper and showed Americans their plans, and it was so aggressively unpopular, is a testament to exactly why they didn't do it with the ACA. They have no plans to run on, other than Schedule F, for example, which is remaking the entire federal government in their mold, which is basically turning every political appointee, every career civil servant in the government who has protections right now. You can't just go into office and fire those people. It would turn every career civil servant into a political appointee. And that means all of the people who've worked their entire lives at the DOJ, the FBI, the FCC, the IRS, they would no longer be loyal to the law, the letter of the law, the Constitution. They would instead be loyal to Donald Trump. That's how it would work. That is how political appointees work. And so right now I think you can appoint about 4,000 political appointees, but there are hundreds of thousands of career civil servants in the government. Imagine, for example, if instead of the DOJ being led only by one appointee, Bill Barr, and his deputy, and just a few people at the top, but otherwise you have people whose adherence is to the law, the Constitution, our statutes. Now you have only political appointees. You have the Stephen Millers of the world, the Jeffrey Clarks of the world, the Kash Patels of the world, completely staffing the DOJ. Now imagine what it looks like at the next election when somebody says, "Oh, there was fraud in Philadelphia. There was fraud in Detroit at the main counting center. We have to throw those votes away." And instead of the DOJ being like, "Where's your proof? You don't have any. This is bullshit," which, by the way, is Bill Barr's own words on this issue. Instead of that happening, and now you have Stephen Miller and Jeffrey Clark and John Easton and Kash Patel and all of these other Trump sycophants. Now they go, "Oh, you know what? This is serious. We do have to cast doubt on these votes that came in here. I don't think we can accept the election results in Detroit. I don't think we can certify these results." So then it goes back to the House. There's a contingent election. It goes into the state delegations, and Republicans control more of those, and so they win the next election. There is a reason that Project 2025 is not just leading us to the doorstep of autocracy, that it is full-blown autocracy. There is a reason why it is so dangerous. Remaking the federal government so that it is filled only with political appointees has ramifications so far beyond anything that we can comprehend in this country. I know other countries have seen it before, where the entire government is staffed by political appointees. Those are banana republics. That is what Donald Trump wants to impose here. And I say all of that not to cast you into a pit of despair, even though I'm sure that people are cast into pits of despair because we have a week to go until the election anyway. But I say that to let you know that in this election, first of all, let me just say this right off the bat. I try to bring it to you as straight as I humanly can every single day. I believe in my heart of hearts we are going to win this election. I have sat here and I've looked at the polls that show us in a tied race. We also know that independents are breaking for Kamala Harris by, depending on the polls, as many as 10 points. The last New York Times Siena poll shows independents breaking for Kamala Harris 42-32. So if the polls are close between Democrats and Republicans and you have independents breaking for Kamala by a 10-point margin, that bodes really well for her. We also know that a sizable portion of Republicans are Nikki Haley voters who expressly came out during the primary to register their dissatisfaction with Donald Trump. They got out of their houses and went and voted for Nikki Haley to show everybody that they were that unhappy with Donald Trump. And sure, some of them are going to come home to Trump in the end because they might not be able to stomach voting for a Democrat. But if somebody was willing to vote for Nikki Haley, even when it was a foregone conclusion that Donald Trump was the nominee, that goes to show that that dissatisfaction is real and it's prevalent. And so even if there's just 5% of these Republicans, right now the numbers that we're looking at are Democratic return ballots and Republican return ballots, for example, and mail ballots. That doesn't mean that 100% of Democrats are voting for Kamala Harris and 100% of Republicans are voting for Donald Trump. It may very well mean that 97% of Democrats are voting for Kamala Harris and 80% of Republicans are voting for Donald Trump. We know that there are people out there in the Republican Party, these Reagan Republicans, these Nikki Haley Republicans, by the way, who've shown more courage than Nikki Haley herself, but those people are out there. I do a series with Tim Miller where we talk to those exact people. Those Bulwark type people, those Wall Street Journal reading people. And those people are not going to break 100% for Donald Trump. So when we see returns that say, okay, we've got X amount of ballots, Republican ballots, these are people who have been lifelong Republicans, does not necessarily mean that they are 100% Donald Trump voters. In fact, far from it. So all of that is to say, do not look at the polls. Do not worry about the polls. Just make sure that we are doing what we can do. And there are a few things that we can do, and I'll give you those examples right now. The first thing is what I've been saying for years, and that is find your circles of people, 1 or 2 or 3 people in your circle, and make those people your responsibility. I can sit here until I'm blue in the face talking to as many people as I can. We can send mailers, we can do commercials, we can do advertisements, we can send politicians out to talk to people. None of that is going to rival the power that you have with your circles of people. If you're looking for trust, which is the capital that we use, that's everything. The highest degree of trust is not among influencers or ads or political campaigns or politicians themselves or media outlets. It is among people in your circles of people. So if you have somebody in your life who is not interested in politics, maybe just aged into the process, 18, 19, 20, maybe a true undecided voter, maybe somebody who voted for Trump before but soured on him, doesn't matter what it is, make that person your responsibility. And if you don't think that you flipping 1 or 2 people in your life can have a difference, I've said this before and I will repeat it every day until Election Day itself. The difference in Wisconsin, the tipping point state in 2020 between Joe Biden and Donald Trump was 2 votes per precinct. That's it. So 2 votes per precinct is enough to flip that precinct, which is enough to flip a county, which is enough to flip a state, which in this case may very well be the difference between a Trump presidency and a Harris presidency. Do not doubt the agency that you have. And if you do doubt the agency that you have, just look at how hard Republicans are trying to prevent you from being able to cast your ballot. That is how powerful you are in terms of what you're able to do in this election period here. The other thing is, if you are looking for places to donate, to volunteer, there are a ton of different options. You can go to Vote Save America, you can go to Stand Up America, you can go to the campaigns themselves, you can donate, you can phone bank, you can text bank, you can knock on doors, you can canvass. There is more to do. So instead of despairing, instead of doom scrolling, instead of worrying, and trust me, I get it, my diet consists mostly of chocolate and Xanax. So I understand, I get it. Try to do something useful this election period. Make sure you are reaching out to more people. But the number one thing you can do is be responsible for your circles. That will have the biggest impact here. And do not underestimate that impact that you can have. So I will leave it there. Thank you all for listening and for watching tonight, for tuning in. The people who are watching right now are the people really who are making a difference here, who are making yourselves messengers to go and reach out to other people to make these same arguments. And I appreciate you taking the time. One small request that I have is, if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, that's the best way to support my work. I don't do paid ads. I don't do sponsorships. I never put my content behind a paywall. I never will. The single best way to support what I do is just to hit the subscribe button, completely free and a great way to support me and my work. Okay. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you at the next one. Bye everybody.